All right, guys, what's going on? Mr. Maltese here. Gonna try and run through a presentation with you guys. This is going to go with the assignment that is going to be due at the end of the day on Thursday. So today's assignment is going to be looking at a connection between the origination of the COVID-19 virus with the communist rule of Mao Zedong in China and the famine that started under his rule. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background information on the topic so that when you watch this video next that ties the two together, you have a little bit more of an understanding of what they're talking about. So right here, this guy is Mao Zedong. He was very poor, came from a poor family in China. And because of that, he wanted to lead a revolution. He wanted to change the country and take power away from the rich, power away from the elites, and give power to the lower classes, the working classes. And he created a big communist revolution. Now, if you look at this picture, there's a propaganda poster after he's taken power. You can see it's kind of similar, has some similarities to a propaganda poster of Kim Il-sung of North Korea. Both communist dictators, kind of similarities that we see there. People and he's celebrating, and they're like this big kind of overall godlike figure almost. So Mao Zedong establishes himself as a communist dictator over China. Now, when you're in communism, one of the things that means is that businesses are no longer private businesses. The government's going to run everything, the entire market. So all of these private farms that are owned by people, individual people, can't have those anymore. There are no more private farms in China under the rule of Mao Zedong. What happens is instead, all of those little farms that were private farms become what's called collective farmland. If you did the Cambodian genocide for your project, you probably know a little bit about what collective farmland is. But basically, it's a bunch of farms like you see here that are taken over by the government, the leader, and the people are allowed to work there. They get paid to work there by the government, but they can't own the farmland themselves. Now, this is where things start to go wrong a bit. There's a lot of different reasons that are argued or debated, or you could link the Chinese famine back to. We're going to talk about just a few. So what it comes down to is a couple of things. Is one is just bad government management by Mao Zedong. Since he's in charge of all the farmland, that means he's technically in charge of all the food. So one thing that happens is they try a new program called deep farming, where they plant the seeds deeper in the soil, and their thought is it will produce stronger plants because they'll have stronger roots because they're more deep and richer soil. Well, what actually ends up happening when you plant deep like that is it takes the plants longer and it makes it more difficult for them to emerge out of the soil. And that energy that they use trying to escape leads to smaller crops and less crops. Another issue that they have, Mao Zedong also tries to use China's massive population to kind of jump from one big project over to another. And his idea is we'll just tackle each thing as we go. So one of the earlier things he tackles is food, and he has people plant a bunch of crops, and then he moves on to this idea of steel production, where he wants to try and industrialize the country, and in order to do so, he needs to produce lots of steel. But while they're focused on that, a lot of the crops that were grown, they forget to go back and actually harvest, and a lot of crops are just basically wasted. There are some people who have studied the situation, some historians and some economists who studied the Chinese famine, who say that one of the biggest issues was just distribution of food. They say there was plenty of food and that the Chinese people actually could have survived, but because of the poor leadership and the poor government structure, That's what actually led to the people starving. Not necessarily that there wasn't enough, but that just wasn't distributed properly. But whatever the case, the Chinese famine leads to the deaths of about 30 to 40 million people. Even though it was unintentional, Mao Zedong is responsible for one of the largest amount of deaths in human history. So after you guys finish this, there's going to be a link below that I would like you guys to check out. It's going to be a video that is going to be describing the origins of the COVID-19 virus and a little bit in a way tying it back to the Chinese famine that I just talked about with you guys. So there'll be more instructions also for what you're going to be doing after that, you guys. And I will see you guys back our in our hours, either Thursday or Friday. Go ahead and stop by, you guys, and we'll talk about it some more.